This is Auteur Detour, wherein three film lovers travel through the filmographies of cinema's most important directors in hopes of finding a greater understanding on the other side.
Welcome back to Auteur Detour. This week we're going to be covering The Man Who Wasn't There. The Man Who Wasn't There is a 2001 film by Joel and Ethan Coen, presented in black and white and set in the 1940s, Santa Rosa, California. The movie centers on Ed Crane, played by Billy Bob Thornton. Ed is a disaffected, emotionally reserved barber who, after being presented with a potential business opportunity in dry cleaning, is taken down a path of blackmail, death, and mistaken identity. Needing money to start the dry cleaning business, Ed decides to blackmail his wife's boss, eventually killing him in self-defense when his plot is uncovered. Ironically, Ed is later tried, convicted, and ultimately executed for a separate crime he actually did not commit. Shot masterfully by the great cinematographer Roger Deakins, The Man Who Wasn't There manages to seamlessly blend the Coen Brothers' love for classic film noir with period piece nostalgia, the end result being one of their most overtly philosophical and understated, and dare I say, underappreciated films to date. What did you guys think of The Man Who Wasn't There?
I first saw this movie, this is Ian, I first saw this movie when it came out, and kind of like the rest of culture, it, slipped past me a little bit. Like, I appreciated it and I loved it, but I didn't see it again for years. And, it's not like I didn't like it. I kind of, always thought of it as like an underappreciated movie, but it wasn't a movie I went back to time and again. And that being said, I did watch it twice in the last 2 weeks going into this episode, and I fucking love this movie. I think it's so good. There's so much in it. I think it's incredibly rich. I think that it's, my big take on it, is just that it's the Coen Brothers doing exactly what they do best, like for better or worse sometimes, but it's like them at their most, just like chewing up the visual sort of prose of it all, and then like film like loving just history, just like chewing into all of that. They're just really all in on this movie, I feel like.
Well, I think it's like an amazing marriage. This is Travis. Guten Tag, if I may. This movie is like a perfect marriage to me of like that kind of central theme in a lot of their movies, which is like the simple person kind of like transgressing in a way that's like morally, ambiguous, rather than kind of like an act of evil that has like horrible repercussions, right? But unlike some of the other movies that plot device kind of drives, like Fargo and even Raising Arizona, it doesn't have the same kind of like propulsion, or simplicity. It kind of like they also kind of like marry that to like a movie like Miller's Crossing or Hudsucker Proxy, where it's also like so much like a work of like an homage to like a really specific genre of film, and I think that works really well for this movie. It's I love it. It's actually like, of the movies we've seen so far, Raising Arizona, Fargo, Big Lebowski, and this one are the one that I owned on Blu-ray. Like,
me too. Same.
Nice.
Yeah, I actually I love this movie. It's actually one of their first ones I actually owned on DVD. I think it was a DVD, and hence I'd seen it so many times. And it's funny because when we got this together in the first place, talking about Coen movies, I completely even forgot it's one of those movies that like is part of their filmography that's so often forgotten. I talked to so many people in the last week or two about, we're doing The Man Who Wasn't There. Like, what? What's that?
It sits in that Barton Fink like region where people just kind of don't think of it. It's also another one that came out a year after their big, one of their big smash hits, and then it was like kind of forgotten.
Totally, it's like one of those movies for me that's like an old shirt that you wore so much and loved, and then it just got thrown into the back of the closet and you just completely forgot about it until now. I'm like, oh yes, I remember this shirt. Awesome. Let's put this back on and try it on,
Well, one thing about that shirt is that it's gray. And this movie made no money, and I was looking at it, and I have to imagine that's partly because of the black and white cinematography, which is really sad because I love black and white visuals, and
Me too.
I think this movie looks fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Roger Deakins, he got nominated for this movie, he didn't win it. I was looking at the Oscars for this year. I know it's stupid to keep going back to the Oscars when we're talking about these movies, but it's so disappointing when you see...
What's there? What do we got?
I mean, just the fact that, like, he was the only nomination that came out of this movie, whereas, like, not that he was one of the MVPs of this movie for sure, but, like... you got like Mary Zophre's costuming is incredible in this movie, and she didn't even get nominated. She's like a constant collaborator with the Coens, and she's always incredible. But this one is one of her standouts to me, where it's like, I don't know, just
production design could have gotten a nomination for sure. Yeah.
And writing and like just so much. It's just disappointing. And then like the other movies that came out that year that like didn't win also, because that was like it just pisses me off. But anyway,
what are they? You gotta tell us.
Well, I mean, it was like I just remember like Amelie was that year, and Son of the Bride. These two foreign movies that came out that year that were like incredible foreign movies, and neither one of them won Best Foreign Picture even. Where I was looking at the Oscar nominations that year, I think the thing that did win for cinematography in that year was Fellowship of the Ring, which fair enough, that's got beautiful cinematography.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But
okay.
So that's understandable. But just like, I mean, it was like the directors, like it wasn't, Coen Brothers weren't nominated. And the winner, I wish I could remember, but it was somebody like, it was Ron Howard. That's who it was for Beautiful Mind.
Oh, yeah.
And then actor and actress were also for Beautiful Mind.
That movie Beautiful sucked.
And I'm like, it's terrible. And like, and I'm just like, looking at like how that movie was the kind of Oscar darling that year. And Ron Howard is like
there's an interesting parallel or thematic kind of similarity between those two movies. Should we talk about that? Or do you guys...
Sure, go for it. Yeah, let's get into it.
Okay, well, let me just say, like, this, like, literally, this... I had a kind of a reappraisal that happened of this movie in the course of doing this podcast with you guys. And it wasn't when I watched it. It was literally when... It was sort of a combination. It was... Chris, you pointed out a couple times how they keep having characters, like, question each other's manhoods, and like and like it made me and it brought to mind, of course, that like repeated epitaph in this movie, which is like, what kind of man are you?
Exactly.
And so I kept thinking about that, and it really and I was like, I think that's what that movie's like kind of all about. And then Ian, when you kind of were trying to make Miller's Crossing be about like the closeted nature of Tom, and which I kind of I can see it, but like I can't feel it. Like I can't really get into it, and I don't feel like the movie even makes a big effort to do it. Like I don't know. Like this movie to me is much easier to read as this is a closeted or possibly even like completely like repressed gay character. And I don't think it's like you have to read it like that, but literally when you brought that up for Miller's Crossing, I literally was like, wait a minute, that's what The Man Who Wasn't There is about. And I had never had that thought about it. And like,
or it's less subtle in this one. I think it's in both. Like I think it's something.
Well, I think it's like in a lot of their movies, but I think it's
exactly. It's like because they're so, as you've talked about, Chris, like they're so constantly like examining what it is to be a man. I mean, Simple Man's coming up, and that one's a lot of that. But like they're just always doing it.
You mean a Serious Man?
Really, Serious Man. Yeah, sorry. And,
Simple Plan.
Simple Plan.
Billy Bob.
They always fuck me up. Anyway, no, Serious Man is coming up. That's about that a lot. But they always are sort of, we talked about it in Big Lebowski episode. It's like, what is a man?
Right.
And it's like they're really going for that theme in so many of their movies, and a big part of that is like examining sexuality.
But I think
John Polito, like when he makes the pass in this movie, there's like a moment there where like, I don't know, that's the first thing that came to my head too, of just like, is this about repressed sexuality?
But I think it is. I think that this is the movie that's about that. And I think it's about more than that, but I feel like that is like the central thing about this movie. And I think that's because otherwise, I mean, what is it about to you guys?
I mean, Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, for me, I see it through like, and it's funny because when I saw this movie, I was in college and I was taking a bunch of philosophy classes, and I swear to God, I must have read The Stranger right before I saw this movie.
Yes.
And it's
about that too.
You know, and it's
My notes
impossible.
here are
Totally, and I
mostly about The Stranger
and I was thinking
also.
about Kafka and all this other stuff, and Sartre. You know, anyway, you know, a lot of all the college philosophy guys. But existentialism is this huge thing. I cannot see this movie now not through this sort of existential lens, where he is sort of like the existential anti-hero of sorts. He's like the Merceau or whatever character.
Yeah.
There's a lot of similarities, and I'm sure there've been probably a lot of stuff written about those similarities, because obviously both of them are
Yeah,
about
I looked it
a
up
guy
because
who-
it was the first thought that I had at the end of the movie. Not to cut you off if you want to keep going.
Oh no, yeah, exactly. But right, and I hadn't really looked it up, but I'm sure it's right there, and they must have like had that in mind. But obviously, it involves
Yeah.
a main character who's kind of struggling with who he is. He commits a murder, and he's ultimately tried and killed for it at the very end. I mean, that's kind of a general sort of
more
plot
so than
structure, but-
that, it's about his retelling of it, too.
Right.
You know, it's about him looking back, and like you don't realize it until the end of the movie that like it is, you know, it's literally him just like telling his life story, like, which is just like going back to Blood Simple, what I was talking about. I just want to get this out. Like Blood Simple, in our first episode, I talked about how like they throw you off in their film noir by putting you in the mindset of the wrong narrator. You know what I mean? Like the story, you're witnessing this story and this universe through the pair of eyes in Blood Simple, through M. Emmett Walsh's eyes, and in this through Billy Bob Thornton's eyes. And in both places, you're seeing it through these eyes of somebody who has like a view of the world that you should not be living in. You know what I mean? If you're like trying to get the story, basically.
I think it's a little bit
And like, I
yeah.
think,
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I think this
Oh,
one
it's okay.
isn't this one a little more like standard film noir in that it's like kind of like the character who's like committing the crime, like sort of like Double Indemnity style. And like
It's
I
very
agree
Double
with
Indemnity.
like the Blood Simple like take that it is kind of like a twisting, like a like a new kind of version of that. But this feels more kind of like traditional noir to me.
I just
Yeah.
mean like the headspace that both of them put you in.
Yeah.
Is a fucked up, weird, like view of the world that like you have to live through while you're watching the movie. I don't even mean it's the wrong one for like the plot of the movie. I just mean like you're living vicariously through the narrator, whether you are doing it like consciously or not. It's just like the fact of them having narration puts you in that headspace.
Right.
And then like you end up like having to witness all of these things through his eyes, which like he doesn't have the scope to recognize how fucked up he is. You know what I mean? Like you have to do that work.
Yeah, a little
Yeah.
bit. He does. I do think he has more to say about the world around him and stuff like that, and a more interesting point of view than a lot of. I don't know, like when he's like commenting like on all the regular people around him and stuff as he's driving by. Like he does seem to have like a more philosophical, like you were saying, Chris. Like he has like a more philosophical kind of point of view about the world around him that I think kind of informs the movie.
Yeah, well, I definitely read this as The Stranger once it ended and like went back. The reason why I watched it twice in 2 weeks was because after it ended, I was like, oh, like I didn't put that together. Like I said, I haven't gone back to watch this movie as much as you guys have. And like, you know, I remembered the plot details. I remembered a lot of the parts, but I didn't like analyze it as much when I was 19 and it came out. And so, you know, when I saw it when it ended this time and I saw it as The Stranger, I purposely went back to watch it through that thing. And it literally opens like, to my mind, like you asked what I feel like it's about. I think that your reading of it's totally on point. I think that's like a great reading of the movie. I think like, I was thinking about like that opening scene when, you know, it's not the very opening scene, but like that opening narrative is like when they go to the Bible or to the church and they're playing bingo in it. It seems almost like a throwaway joke if you're not watching it from like a philosophical point of view or whatever. But like it hit me as watching it as like The Stranger. And he says in it, like, you know, Doris has never been one for thinking about the great hereafter. Like he's already setting up that like, I don't know. My thought of it was that the man who wasn't there, like the title character, is not him, but God. Like that's like the absurdist and existential point of view, right? That like we're all here just in this chaotic, absurd world. And he's sort of witnessing everybody living that. And he's trying to like figure out a way out of it. And he projects himself in that onto all these different possibilities, whether it's like, you know, a sleazeball coming in with a dry cleaning scheme, or whether it's Birdie, who's like some, you know, idealistic thing in his mind of like unvarnished beauty, you know, and like all this stuff that
innocence, like, possibility. I mean, he's basically just having a midlife crisis. I mean, it's basically like a philosophically kind of like elevated midlife crisis.
Yeah, but it's all because he's trying.
He just wants a new job. He wants a new career. He wants like a young woman.
But like the first line is like, you know, that he doesn't think of himself as a barber. Like he's not that guy. You know, he's like, that is what he's doing.
Right.
And like,
and that's continuously.
This is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful wife.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's kind of, no, and that continuously comes about. Like, who is he? It's like this loss of identity as the movie goes on. Right. He's like, it starts off. The opening line is, what does he say? I cut the hair or whatever. Yeah, I worked in a barber shop, but I never really considered myself a barber, right? But when he goes to trial, when he's constantly, Freddie Wiedenschneider never refers to him by name. He's always the barber, right? Look at this barber. Look at the barber. He's the man. So he's not really a person. And as the film goes on, and as he gets caught up in all of these different sort of shenanigans that pile on top of one another, you know, there he goes. He's no more Ed Crane. He's just the barber.
Yeah, that's why, like, to me, it's really hard to find the arc of this movie. Like, one of the reasons why I feel like this movie didn't like catch hold the way that a lot of their movies have is because, like, it really is episodic and like kind of just keeps going and going and going, and it feels long because of that, even though it's still 2 hours, you know, but it's like it starts to be like, okay, and now this is gonna happen. Like it does that. But like if there is an arc in this movie in my mind, it's from him going to like I'm not, you know, I'm something bigger than this, to him being like, oh, this is who I am. You know what I mean? It's like him coming to terms with like the world around him as being like, you know, absurdist existential reality. Like that's where like the stranger part of it comes in too, you know, where it's like, I don't know. And like how, like at the end, just to skip to the ending, like this is going to be that kind of episode, I feel like, because it is so episodic, but like how, like he comes back to Doris at the end. He's like, well, you know, maybe that's where I was right all along. Like the dream sequence plays out like that too, you know?
Well, he definitely misses her, and he goes to the psychic to like reconnect with her. But yeah,
well, after the car crash, he even says like, you know, time slows down, and it gave me a lot of time to think about things. And he like, it's not just that he's like missing her in that moment. It's like he's realizing who he actually was, I feel like.
Maybe.
I don't know. Anybody?
The end. Let's just stop early today.
I don't know. I mean, Billy Bob, we can talk about him because he's so good in this movie. Like, he's just the picture of like, I don't know. It's an incredible performance.
Restraint is really interesting.
Slow.
Yeah,
he's so slow in it. Like,
I think of this movie as probably the most soothing movie to watch of theirs, partly because it's just so beautifully photographed. And two, like you guys mentioned, the pace of it is, even though a lot of the usual Coen Brother things happen, there's a murder, there's some sort of like, you know, mistaken identity, there's some sort of, you know, twist and turn, but the whole pace of the film is relatively slower than your average. There's not like a escalation of something, then they slow it down. It's kind of a consistently paced movie all the way through. And it's kind of soothing in that regard, largely probably because the main character, the only person you ever see any action through is Billy Bob's character, right? And he's just this straight, mellow, kind of reserved guy all the way throughout. And that's not always the character that he tends to play, but he does it so well. And I think, you know, the Coens obviously had a beef with Nicolas Cage in Raising Arizona because he kept trying to bring new stuff into the role, you know? They're like, Billy Bob was perfect. He did exactly what we needed. He's like right there. And other actors that were less maybe restrained than him would have tried to take this a certain way or do this or that or the other, but he's just so even keel and he nails the character just by being subtle. And he's like, you know, I think they were talking about how actually difficult of a role this would be to play, where it might not look like it. Like, come on, who couldn't do this role? He just kind of stands there and like, you know. But really, there's a lot more to it than that. There's like restraint, that, especially in a character like Billy Bob Thornton. After you see a movie like, you know, Bad Santa or something like that.
Yeah, I like hate Billy Bob Thornton like as a person and as like a star, as like a star. Like he seems creepy.
Too.
I mean, like all like like the bad Santa, like Mr. Woodcock kind of like roles.
Mm-hmm.
Like I hate that stuff. I hate the fact that he like looks like younger now than like when he like made it big like in the late 90s. Like it just something about him like creeps me out. I mean like his vials of blood like with Angelina Jolie. Like I want to hate him so much. But every time I see him in a movie, I'm like, I love this guy. He's hilarious. He's like bizarre. Like he's actually like a great actor. I think he's perfect in this role. It's like impossible for me to imagine like anyone else. But there are a couple scenes where I feel like he I don't want to say he struggles, but like I like the performance less. The part where he kind of tells where he becomes kind of like agitated or excited telling Birdie that he wants to like become her manager. Like I know it's supposed to be like he's having like difficulty expressing himself that way or whatever, but those moments just don't quite they're not as believable to me, especially because and everyone else's performances are so perfect too. Scarlett Johansson's amazing in this movie. I kind of wish she would do more movies like this and less Marvel movies. I had the same
thought today where I was like, fucking,
she was
like,
so
we talk
good.
about the state of cinema a lot on this podcast, but like this movie made me just sit there and be like, what kind of world are we living in that Scarlett Johansson is like making just Marvel movie after Marvel movie when she's so incredible? Like she's such a great actress.
Yeah. So
I mean, she's so good in this.
Yeah, he was good. All the actors are good. I mean, we haven't really talked about Frances McDormand in this movie, but
oh my God, Richard Jenkins is probably my favorite in this movie.
Yes.
I absolutely love that man in this movie. In fact, I hadn't seen him before, or at least I hadn't acknowledged him, but I remember the very first time I saw him in this movie, he's drinking on his porch, obviously, is when Ed Crane goes, and he's like, he's got this part where his head kind of rolls back and then he catches himself again. Oh, it's perfect. He's so good. Perfect. Yeah, I just love that guy.
It's the most perfect drunk nod like ever.
Yes, and he doesn't he do it like twice. Like he's drunk through the whole movie. Like every line he gives is completely drunk, and he's so perfect at it. It's incredible. And, one of the best drunk performances ever. Yeah.
Easily. We've talked about John Polito like becoming my favorite actor through this Coen Brothers experience. He's so good in this movie. Mm-hmm. Michael Badaluccio or Badalucco, however you say it, is good. Like he's great, good. Yeah.
Don't say those words, Ed. Don't say those words.
But yeah, Frances McDormand. Oh, and we haven't said like in an incredible performance. I want to get into this performance. James Gandolfini as Big Dave, the third Big in a row. There was Big Lebowski, Big Dan from Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And now Big Dave. They love
big men. But, and James Gandolfini is a large man.
I mean, he was at like the peak of his powers when this movie came out because of Sopranos, and I feel like that also kind of sucked a lot of the life out of this movie in a weird way because he was like, the biggest like TV star that there was and that maybe that there ever will be at that time. And so I feel like a lot of people saw him in this movie, kind of, it's a character actor role and he stands out because of who he was. I remember feeling like that at the time, like I was going to see a James Gandolfini role, And he's so like, he's the reason, I'll say this, I got notes on this, but like, we talk about how this is like a film noir movie, but he's the real like Hitchcockian performance in this movie. Like he brings a huge like level of like menace, but also empathy and like.
Well, he is like the only one playing it emotionally straight. He's the only one like, he's funny at the dinner when he talks about eating the dead kid and like, basically like verbally abusing his wife, but he also is like he's the only one playing 100% emotionally real, even in that scene maybe. But like when he and kind of Billy Bob Thornton kind of go at it in his office, right? Like he brings so much like pathos and like emotion to that moment. It's crazy, he really does. And like he didn't have to do it. Like, you know what I mean? It could have had a little bit of there's menace and there's also like emotion, and he also cries in front of them.
Like when I say that he's the one who brings that energy, like I feel like obviously like that's the main character that would bring this, but without that performance, it would feel more like a melodrama, like a 1940s melodrama, like a Mildred Pierce or like that kind of thing. Like that's the way that like we didn't mention Tony Shalhoub also is great in this movie. Incredible. And like,
is he in this?
That whole
dude, scene stealing. Amazing. Movie stealing.
Yeah, really. And like that courtroom, drama part of this movie, and then like the Richard Jenkins Birdie, like Lolita style part of this movie, all of that is more like melodrama than film noir to me. Like it's more living in that, like, it's less in the like
it's like a Venn diagram.
Yeah,
I don't know. It feels pretty consistent, like very Chandler-esque. Like they love Raymond Chandler, and this also reminded me in a lot of ways of, like the big, was it The Long Goodbye and Big Sleep? Because there's a lot of these little external characters that affect the main character that he encounters that aren't always like immediately, relevant to the plot, but they're still there and they still move it forward, and they add these little bits of color to a narrative that seems like it's going in a lot of potentially different ways. This one's a little bit more, simplified, I think, than that, but there's still like a real Chandler-esque quality I feel about this movie, especially given the fact that it's only told through, Billy Bob's eyes, which they don't always do in their movies.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it should be said that like film noir, it wasn't exactly a genre like, like westerns or gangster movies.
Right.
Like it kind of came out of just like movies that had like similar thematics, and so for that reason a lot of movies get put in, like Mildred Pierce gets sometimes put under the umbrella of film noir because of its themes, and the way that it's shot and stuff like that. So film noir always kind of has like a loose quality to it, and I feel like I think they are kind of playing with that in the movie. And I think melodrama and film noir, there is some overlap there. You're right, and they could have
I want to go back really quick because I did just look down at this note. This is totally neither, nowhere, not necessary. But you talked about not liking Billy Bob Thornton as a person, and I didn't get this out. But like, what the fuck is it with Coen Brothers stars? I'm thinking of Jeff Bridges, William H. Macy, and Billy Bob Thornton having these shitty music careers where they're all self-serious about their music after they make Coen Brothers movies.
They made music? I had no idea.
Oh my God. Billy Bob Thornton fancies himself a rock star and will not like talk about movies in interviews. He only wants to talk about his music. Jeff Bridges is like lesser so. He like doesn't take it as seriously. But now William H. Macy is like, no, I'm a musician first. Like I'm an actor second.
Really? I had no idea.
Weird thing. Yeah.
Huh.
Anyway, that was neither here nor there. I just wanted to throw that out because it was making me think about like there's a famous interview that maybe you've not heard, Chris. I'm sure you may have heard it, Travis, where Billy Bob Thornton yells at the interviewer for asking him about the movie that he's promoting.
No, I don't know about this.
Oh my God.
I've avoided Billy Bob like as much as possible.
If
Outside
you were
of movies.
gonna watch something, then watch this because it's cringeworthy. Like the guy's like, if the interviewer, it's like a radio show, and he comes at him and it's just like, do you really think we'd be like interviewing your shitty bar band if it wasn't for like you being Billy Bob Thornton? And he like loses his shit. It's great.
Nice.
Do you think the Coens are like hyping them up on this music? Like they're playing, they're giving them their tapes, and they're like, "This is gold. Take this to Columbia."
I think what it is that like being in a Coen Brothers movie makes you feel like you're like a Renaissance man. Like you're like a
maybe.
bigger
I'm an
kind of
artist.
Yeah, than you are.
That's
you
funny.
know?
I do kind of want to take to break down the Billy Bob Thornton is gay kind of like reading of this movie a little bit.
Go into that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think first of all, it's interesting the idea that like, why, I mean, the Coen Brothers always have like kind of like homoeroticism or whatever as like a subtext. Like this is something that kind of exists on a spectrum in like all their characters, and there is a lot of like male camaraderie that kind of blurs this line. And I just think it's interesting, like, John Polito's in the movie as like an openly gay character who like makes a pass in a hotel room at the protagonist of the movie, which is pretty like outre, especially for a movie that's like set in the 40s, it's like kind of like a shocking moment that seems very like contemporary, but also like, no, there were gay people back then too. And it's also interesting because John Polito, who is gay in real life, does not really fit like a pop culture like definition of like a gay man. Like
I remember when I learned that he was gay, and it was years after I saw him play a gay man in this movie. Yeah. And I was like,
wait, what?
I was like, wait, no, that's impossible.
Right.
I mean, that's fucked up to say, but like that's just how your mind works. Like, you know, culture's like beating us into thinking of a certain thing as being what gay is. You know, clearly it's not.
He's not fabulous.
I mean, he is though.
No, he is in his own way for sure. No,
he's a fabulous actor.
He's a genius. He's a fabulous actor, and
I lost. Man. Like I was so good.
Yeah, and he rules this role. Like just he's barely in the movie, and he like absolutely rules the movie. But like he kind of plants the seed, right? Like that. You know, why is he coming on to Billy Bob Thornton? Why is this even part of the film? And also, by the way, another overt reference to Night of the Hunter. What's his name? John Polito dead in the car, looking not beautiful at all, like the shot in Night of the Hunter, looking like grotesque, and also like it's like a gender reversal of the most incredible shot of Night in the Hunter when Shelley Winters is like under the rolling water in her car, floating dead. Anyway, I also want to bring up what's his name? Tony Soprano knew that John Polito was a pansy. Again, like he doesn't like in this era.
Well, my thought on that was that he made a pass at him too. Like,
but why? Why is John Polito does he have no gaydar at all? Is he like just coming on to every man? Or, and this is another interesting part, if you're gonna, by making a movie where it's never explicitly said that the protagonist is gay, but there are certain reasons maybe to believe that, the fact that he hasn't had sex with his wife for years, the fact that he has not even a moments of kind of like temptation when this like younger woman tries to like give him head in a car, not a split second of like like just absolutely like, what are you doing, you know? He's either completely asexual or something's going, he's somewhere on the LGBTQ spectrum if you add the A to it. But my thing is, if you start looking for codes in the movie, I think literally every man in the movie could be read as like a gay character too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one of the things that the Coen Brothers do is show you that, like, you know, in Miller's Crossing, there are like these openly gay characters that are, calling them openly gay actually puts them in sort of like a modern context, like a modern vernacular. It's like there were different kind of ways of being gay and being out or whatever in those eras, and they want to show how different it is from what is normally shown in pop culture.
Actively gay, like not openly gay, but like actively gay.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
not like, you know, and I totally know what you mean. And like, I don't know, I think that's really interesting. I do have that in my notes also. You know, I didn't like think it through that incredibly like thoroughly, but I think it's totally fair to like, especially when you talk about that Scarlett Johansson scene, because that is one of those moments. I did wrestle with like the first time I watched this movie through again, and like why, when he's actually getting something that he like seemed to have wanted, like he's constantly going for these exit routes through the movie, you know, these like exit routes out of his life. And when he has one that like willingly throws herself at him, that like he has been sort of like weirdly creepily pining after, it's clearly like there's some, you know, he's looking at her from, you know, he knows that she's a kid. Like he says it in that one line where he's like, you're a kid, basically. Like he's like, there's like a weird thing that's like creepy, but also like he's unsure of what he's doing. I don't know. And then, it's like, a
middle-aged man extremely attracted to and interested in a teenage girl. It's messed up and weird. Like, you know, if the dad wasn't like a drunken, like, you know, library dweller, then he would have probably been like, what's going on here? But the fact is, he wasn't sexually attracted to her. I think that's like, I think that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only way it makes sense to me. Like,
well, the only other thing that I could think of is that, like, Oh, go ahead, Chris. You have something?
It's really interesting because I actually had never considered this angle before when you guys are talking about it, because I think I'm so, like I said before, I've only able to view this as like an existential film where the character's literally like kind of floating as a disembodied sort of agency-less character through a movie. The only time he actually exercises any true agency of his own is when he decides to actually go through with the plot to extort Big Dave, basically to try to change his life. Because think about, he didn't actively seek out his job. It fell into his lap. He didn't even actively seek out his wife. She basically just proposes to him. All of the stuff
to him. He does,
right?
He does also, try to get Scarlett Johansson's career going. Like that's an active.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Where
That's a good
he's
point.
like, I'm making inquiries in San Francisco. Like he's like trying to like. That's another weirdly like active. That's why I mean when I say he's like searching for escape routes, because like everything in his life is so, like you said, it's just fell into his lap and he's like sort of like submissive about it. You know what I mean? And then like the only time that he shows any kind of weird dominance is when he's trying to get out of his life. And that's why I was not surprised, but like that moment when John Polito makes a pass at him, it's just a little wink. And he goes like, "Are you making a pass at me?" Like, and he's freaked out. And to me, it did read more like when you're presented with something that you're not ready for, then you have a freak out. It didn't look like homophobic or like, it read like, holy shit, that's a guy that's actually arrogant and living his dream.
Yeah.
Or not living his dream, but like living his truth. And like, I'm a guy who's not.
That's why it's threatening.
Truth.
Yeah,
like,
totally. Yeah.
That's a really good point. That's really interesting. Right.
I also want to say, like, there's a weird, again, James Gandolfini knows that John Polito is a quote unquote pansy. He knows that, and also like James Gandolfini also fell into his job because of his wife, which is the same as Billy Bob Thornton. I feel like there's a weird parallel there. And like, James Gandolfini pretends like he is like this big war hero and stuff like that, which he absolutely is not.
Well, and he's Big Lebowski. Like that's the Big Lebowski's thing is like all of his money was his wife's money. All of his, like supposed glory is all just fabricated,
right?
It's like
very much
it's another character that's like exactly like the Big Lebowski.
So yeah, so James Gandolfini, there's some questionable stuff going on there. Let's look at the other characters. You got the confirmed bachelor Barber. You've got the art instructor, the piano instructor in San Francisco.
Right. In San Francisco.
You've got Freddie Riedenschneider, who talks pretty. You got who else? Like, those are the main male
Richard
characters.
Jenkins,
questionable. Why is he so drunk? What's he looking for in those? What's he repressing with that alcohol? Maybe the death of his wife. Maybe he wanted his wife to die. I don't know. We don't know. I'm just asking questions. The point is like, there's some interesting stuff going on. The question of why don't they have any kids? How do they have he and Frances McDormand this incredibly intimate relationship where he's like helping her get dressed, he's shaving her legs, but there's no sex, and there's and again there's this like kind of intimacy and yet like distance that can never be bridged. And what is the nature of that?
That's a great point. Like when he's shaving her legs, like, "I love you, honey," and it's like this kind of he just kind of looks up at her, and it's this sort of blankness.
What is being unspoken there? And like what is? I'd love to get your guys' take on the scene where Shooter McGavin tries to sell him like the driveway stuff. Like, what is going on there?
That totally reads that way to me too. When she like the look that that Frances McDormand gives Billy Bob Thornton when he hasn't kicked the guy out is like, you could look at it as like a great like classic Coen Brothers like giving a female more power than a lot of movies do, because she is like, not to use this terrible expression, but like she wears the pants in the family, but like you could also read it like, what are you doing? Like humoring this guy that's on our porch.
She's way more mad at that than she is when she finds him alone with Birdie at the work party.
Right.
Which she,
absolutely.
Which kind of just goes out of her mind right away.
I think you hit it.
That's a great point.
It's a really good, I think also, let me just say, I realized if anybody else is listening, I think a lot. Anyway, I do think
say that
I think, therefore, I am.
Thanks, Descartes.
No, I think that we've talked about how like there's always in their movies two planes of existence that the movie exists on, which is like that the characters are dealing with these, things that are happening in their lives, but there's this existential bigger thing that's happening to them that they can't control, you know? And like, we've talked about that in a lot of their movies. And like, I think that like, that's how like our two sort of reads on this movie, like do come into it. It was just like, cause I do think that like, that's a completely valid and like a correct read on this movie that like, that you sort of solidified, Travis, in my mind. But I also think that there is a lot too, and I think it's playing on top of the other thing that like he's dealing with the fact that like nobody is looking after him. He's like, we're all in this like on our own, you know, like, I don't know.
Well, I agree with that. And I think that there's like, yeah, like you said, there's like these two overlaid worlds. There's like the cosmic order of things, which I think is like the UFOs are kind of like standing for. And then there's like the man's worlds, like the world that we've built for ourselves, where we all kind of fill these roles. You know, all these kind of relationships that come into Ed's life are like, you know, marketplace relationships. The guy selling the, you know, the sidewalk, the, you know, driveway stuff, the guy who comes in for a haircut, like all his life is defined by like everyone's roles in like a capitalist society, you know, and like the way he looks at like everybody going about their business, the way he like listens to people just talking about their bullshit inane stuff in the barber shop, you know, to him that's just all kind of like just made up by people. And there's, you know, all the Coen Brothers movies have like a juxtaposition, or I feel like they do, of people who are very happy in their little role in society, you know, the role that society gives them, and then other people who want to like strive for or kind of scheme towards something better. And you do have to like fight to break out of this system. You have to like, you basically have to hurt somebody else to kind of like get yours or to get something bigger or better. And I don't know. Yeah, I think that's so it's sort of like where these worlds kind of come in conflict. Like, you know, you're not just a barber, you know, like he knows that there's like art like in Birdie, and like this guy, that scene is so harsh where the guy's just like, no, she could be like a typist, like that could be her role, and it's just so like crushing to him to hear that, and to me as like an audience member, and it's like, but then Birdie is like.
Yeah, I never really thought about a career in music.
Because she's not that kind of person. She's, you know what I mean? Like, she's happy just being like a teenage girl, like talking to her friend.
Yeah,
and like,
she should be.
Well, I mean, you should be allowed to like want something more than like what society hands to you. Like, I don't think it's like positive or negative. But like,
I mean, you know, not to like, I do think that the guy is right. Even though he's harsh, like the music instructor, the San Francisco fucking French guy, is right about Birdie. Like, she's got the talents of a very nice girl. Like, she's not, you know, as he says, he goes over and he plays Liszt and he's like, you know, you play E flat. It says E flat. She plays E flat. That's great. No mistakes. But like, that's not what music is. And she doesn't seem like a musical person. She doesn't care about it, you know?
She might never be a concert pianist, but the point is, who you are as a person should not be defined by your role in like a marketplace system, and that's what Ed Train feels,
which is the whole
and
movie.
That's what is like. I think that's the point. So it's like, so that's what I'm trying to say. Like, there's like a repression going on in like how you conform to the fact that it's like takes place in the 50s, right, or like that era, and everything is like, he's like, I have the house, I have the ice box or whatever, you know what I mean? Like that he can't conform to that reality. That's just like a natural state of things. And I think that you can look at it just very simply as that, or you can say like, wait, being a repressed homosexual in that era adds like another dimension to it, which kind of like makes that more powerful.
Always,
and I want to say like there's that important line where he talks about like, this hair, it's part of us and we cut it off. You know what I mean? I think he's talking about like denying your own nature, like literally like you have hair that grows out of you. It's literally part of you, and you can have one of 5 haircuts. Like, that's what this movie is about to me. Like, it's about like how we define ourselves in like a capitalist society, and how we have to take these roles, and they don't necessarily feed our souls.
One thing that the Coen Brothers like are, you know, not constantly doing, but that they've repeatedly done, is they have these like incredibly referential movies to to films of the past, like, you know, to the point where they're like mimicking scenes sometimes and fully like cribbing names, you know, like two of the, like, you know, Nerdlingers is straight out of, is it Double Indemnity? Like, I think that's the, I don't know.
Oh, I thought it was Animal House. I know, I think it is. Like, am I crazy? Maybe. It doesn't matter.
What? No, it's Double Indemnity. You're thinking of, anyway, okay. No, but that's what they do, is that they do this, but then what they tend to bring to it, it's why they're one of the, like, the, you know, prognosticators of the neo-noir movement, is that, like, or the, you know, progenitors of it, is that, like, they tend to, like, live in that world, but then, like, introduce a person into it that, like, has a problem that they wouldn't have explored in that time. You know, whether it's like what we're talking about right now, where it's like during the movies of that era, whether it's the melodramas like Gentleman's Agreement or like Double Indemnity or whatever, like they would not have been so comfortable sort of like tackling, like, I mean, they borrow also from like Lolita, and like, you know, they're able to like use stuff that's later than the 40s and 50s, you know? And I think that like, that's really like why I said that they're like living their best life when they make this movie. 'Cause it really feels like they're just like completely doing so much of that, where they're like recreating their favorite things from Hitchcock and, you know, Raymond Chandler and all these things that they love to just like, you know, we've talked about how like they're like diorama filmmakers in a lot of ways, where like you get the feeling that like their passion comes from like recreating something that they see in their head, and like not so much of just like trying to like express a feeling or that kind of thing, you know? And so like they do that, but then they also like, you know, I like the way that they like, modernize it. I don't know. That's like the longest way to go, to be like, they're modernizing these like classic movies in a way that makes them still feel like classic movies. You know, it's not just like a parody of a classic movie, or like a recreation. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of really stupid movies that kind of do that kind of thing, like Down with Love. Do you remember that? Renee Zellweger.
Yeah, that's a perfect example.
That
Thank
stuff.
you.
Yeah,
because that's what I'm talking about too, where it's like a lot of people will try to like do a 1950s thing, but then like it's just like stupid. Like it doesn't work. Yeah. But like they make it feel right. Like this, you know, I don't know.
Well, like I said,
part of it is their attention to the detail in their dialogue. I mean, they love writing uniquely. Yeah. Like it's not ever the same character with the oh yeah, this character we've seen before. There's no character like High, right? There's really no character like, right. You know, and Travis hates him, but like, you know, what's his name? George Clooney and Oh Brother Where Art Thou? Or right. All these guys are very much themselves. And I think their writing, especially when it's reflective of a certain time and place, is really helps contribute to that, you know, like, yeah, it really builds that world well.
They're really exploring it, and they're really adding like so much in terms of character and so much in terms of like specificity and like.
Well, that's why I loved James Gandolfini's performance in this, and we've already talked about it, but like the fact that he is, you know, so vulnerable, like in some of those scenes, even though he is like menacing and, I don't know, we haven't. Like that scene where he's making Frances McDormand laugh, and that's like my favorite moment in almost any Coen Brothers movie that we've seen so far. I just love it so much when they're at the dinner table and she's like holding in the laugh that she knows is coming because she wants them to get the story because she's clearly already heard it. And she bursts out with this like laugh that is very real because she's infatuated with him, but also like forced because she's heard it before, and like she's building up his ego. And like it's so beautiful, like that scene, and like in like a funny way, like not in like a beautiful way, but like in a funny way. And then her disappointment when she finds out that he was full of shit, and she just says like, what a dope, you know? It's like that whole arc that happens in it, and him when he's like crying to Billy Bob Thornton about like the shit that he's gotten himself into is like incredibly vulnerable. And that's like, when I said that he's a character that feels very Hitchcockian, like this movie like does borrow a lot from like, you know, the main Hitchcock things that I saw in it were like Shadow of a Doubt, Strangers on a Train, weirdly, like not really like in the plot, but just in like the pacing of it and the tenor of it. But then like also Spellbound, which is like one of my favorites that like not that many people, and especially like when, you know, I don't know, some of the like visual stuff in this one was very reminiscent of Spellbound to me. And then I don't know, I just feel like he would have fit right into those movies, that character. But then also like it is modernized in a way that doesn't feel like it's like you said, like Down with Love, like trying to update it in a weird way. I don't know. I just loved it.
I love Spellbound. That's a good movie.
It's so good.
It's got some weird stuff.
One thing I wanted
to
say.
Doesn't Spellbound have that shot where like the guy has the gun on Ingrid Bergman, I think, and then she like she knows he's not going to shoot her, so she like walks out of the office, and you see it from the point of view of the guy like thinking if he's going to shoot her, but knowing he'll get caught, and then he turns the gun around on himself. But because you're looking at the camera, it would be impossible to turn your hand, and it doesn't. It's not really believable. Check this movie out if you want to. It's it's a great movie, but there's some parts like that just like he was really trying some stuff that didn't fully work.
But this has that too. I mean, when it goes from like the car crash that's so cheesy looking to all of a sudden it's a very real car floating through the air, you know, like in slow motion and spinning, and then you see the hubcap spinning for like the most Coen Brothers circle fucking theme, like in complete like, you know, shoving it down our throats, to then like it turns into a UFO. Also very UFO, where it's where then it turns into a UFO, and talk about like that's shot in Spellbound, like taking you out of it. Like that UFO shot, especially that first one where it's just like on a black background, is like in a movie that's so like stark and like very like black and white, real feeling, you know, it suddenly looks like you're in a cartoon. Like it's so fucking weird and takes you out of it.
It's definitely animated looking like, too.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to mention, this is just a note that you guys can have fun with. Blood Simple is a movie where Frances McDormand's infidelity sets off like a series of murders where people don't know who got murdered and by who, you know? And that's exactly the same thing here.
Yeah. Right. Also say that scene where the person, the obnoxious boss comes over for dinner, is straight out of Raising Arizona, only in this one he does get to sleep with the wife. Like he wants, like
that's true. And the dream sequence in this one, like, you know, we talked about it a little bit, but like, you know, me loving their fucking dream sequences, but like, it kind of is the polar opposite of the Raising Arizona one, whereas like Raising Arizona is him imagining this world where he has this beautiful family that he can grow old with and that kind of thing. And like in this one, he's seeing what he actually had or has in this family and like completely not like appreciating it.
I don't agree with your take exactly, Ian, because like I mean he does appreciate his wife, and I think he always kind of did, but like the thing that like kind of separated them, I don't think there was any way to bridge that. Do you know what I mean? I don't think he was thinking like, oh, if only I could have gone back and been happy with her. I don't think there was any way for that to happen. Like obviously this
I'm not even saying like he should have been happy with her, because I agree with your take, but like he should have, like, I don't know. He does, you know, this also goes back to me saying that, like, he's an unreliable narrator in a weird way, because like when he says that like the new lawyer is pitting him as like this guy who was dragging Doris through all of this, and like, you know, it's all him, and he was, you know, and then he says, and it kind of stung because it kind of rang true a little bit. And it's like, no, it completely rang true. You fucked her over and then she killed herself. Like, he has no self-awareness of that at all. Like, I don't know.
Right. I mean, yeah, that kind of got me too. That's a good point about, you know, an unreliable narrator. I was always thinking about, well, wait, why did he get busted in the first place? Because they found his name signed on the piece of paper of the murdered guy underwater. That's entirely circumstantial evidence. There's no way to like convict someone based on something like that.
Right.
And like, how is that going to lead him to a conviction? You know what I mean? Like that's not how the criminal justice system works, but whatever. It's his story that he's telling, and it's not supposed to, you know, be thought.
And
too
he's
hard
literally
about.
telling it to like a pulp magazine,
right?
Which is like, such an interesting way to end.
He says a
this.
men's magazine, and there's different ways to interpret that. There's a spread of magazines on his desk, and one of them is like a health magazine with like a bodybuilder guy in like a Speedo. And, I collect old magazines a little bit, and there are a ton of old magazines that are like, this magazine's about health or like about diet, and you open it up and it's just an excuse to be like, to just show people in bathing suits, basically, and it's just like, are these new smoothies healthy? And it's just like literally like a woman like pinup. And it's just like, it seems like they work, I don't know. So I feel like there's they're like referencing like gay coded stuff.
Yeah.
From the time in their gay coding of this thing. And I also just want to say the fact that the only, like the character at the end who kind of brings him to justice is like the dead gay guy who he couldn't be gay with.
And the fact that
basically the whole thing started because of his repressed homosexuality in this kind of reading. And then it, I don't know.
Yeah. And, you mentioned it already, but like the one line that really keeps repeating is, what kind of man are you? Yeah. It's like, and that is like a good piece of evidence that you're reading on this.
But I guess I'm just saying, like, the fact that the guy that he finally had to take the fall for the death of that guy in some way, in some weird convoluted cosmic way, it was his fault that he ended up dead, even though he didn't actually kill him. So, yeah.
Right. Had he like accepted his past or whatever, maybe these things would have been different or something,
exactly,
right?
Exactly. Or like, I don't know, he was still gonna like do the blackmail, I guess. But I guess if he had from the beginning, if he had somehow had the ability in his society to live out and gay, things would have been different. I don't know. Right. I do want to say that I Googled, has anyone else had this like reading of the movie, and I did find one article on it. Which I would recommend that people check out. It's called "Pansies Don't Float," which was an alternate title from that Roderick Jaynes, like in some sort of like DVD bonus feature or article in a magazine or something, said that the Coen Brothers originally wanted to use that as the title of the movie. But but that kind of like bolstered my reading, but I have to give credit. They're the ones who. It's two authors, and they're the ones who said, like, and if you notice that, like, some of the other male characters could also be read as gay, and that is the part that I kind of hadn't hit me until I read it there. So I just want to give credit to that, so no one thinks I'm stealing that idea.
Fair. Was there anything before we start to rate and wrap up that you guys like wish was different in this movie?
We were just talking about how,
because it's not a 10 to me. I mean, I don't know.
Well, it's not the casting. I mean, we were just talking about that. I was actually before this, like we always do, trying to think about who would I have cast here, here, and here. And I'm really having a hard time changing any one of these characters out. So that certainly isn't it.
I agree with that. Yeah, I wouldn't recast this movie at all. I think like the casting is spot on. I think like if there's one flaw that this movie has, it is a very debatable flaw. But I do think that like it lives in this pacing that like can be hard to get into. It's like it's not necessarily flaw just because something's challenging doesn't mean it's bad, and it is a challenging pace. Like the way that this movie, like including the Carter Burwell score, is just this sort of like,
I was gonna say like that
non-intrusive.
That music gets you into the pace, though. You know what I mean? Like it gets
does.
you on that level. I feel like it's not.
It really does like live in that pace. But I just mean like by an hour and 35 minutes in, it can start to feel like, how is this movie going to end in the next 5 minutes? And then it doesn't end for 25 minutes. And it's like, okay, it just does sort of like, because the arc is harder to find in it, it does have like I said, it doesn't, just because it's challenging doesn't mean it's bad. But I do think that like there maybe could have figured out a way to cut 10 minutes or something like that. And it would have improved it potentially as like a movie that I would maybe throw on more often than I do.
The Italian wedding scene could pretty much be cut, except that...
it's funny.
Except, it's awesome.
Well, it has to lead up to why she's asleep, basically.
Right.
Like,
I mean, they could have just said, like, we went to a wedding,
right.
like, in the narration, and then she got drunk. But all those details are so good. Yeah, her thing about, like, life is a bowl of cherry, like, her dissatisfaction with life, like, I think is really important to see. And then I think also... like the fact when she calls them like wops, and then like and then but then he also does, like he also refers to John Polito as like the pansy, like again, everyone else, like he has no problems like calling by their kind of like, again, like their role in society, or like their kind of like one word definition, but then he like refuses that himself.
Well, and it's so funny and ironic that like she falls for James Gandolfini, who's like as Italian as it gets. You know what I mean? So it's
right. Well, I think she's supposed to be Italian. She's supposed to be Italian.
Yeah, no, of course. But it's funny how she like has all this disdain for them. You know, like
Michael Badalucca like plays more Italian than Frances McDormand, but like she's supposed to be an Italian sort of. You know,
it's just so weird. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you did bring up those, you know, that they do use that. I'm not going to go off on it again because we keep doing it, and we'll do it again very shortly. But like, again, no representation, whatever. Fucking these guys suck.
Have you been to Santa Rosa?
Terrible. I mean, more than once. Yeah, I don't know. It's another one of those things. We don't have to get into it because we've talked about it at length, and we will talk about it at length. And it's like, it's just another example of them not using their power to like uphold the responsibility that filmmakers do have. I don't know.
But again, it always is. I become more and more aware of this, like as I think about representation and the way that it can go bad, like what representation can go wrong in their movies and others, where it does become to me like more and more like this is not for like a single filmmaker to solve. And I'm not trying to like absolve them of responsibility, but just saying like,
no, I'm not either. And I'm not trying to, you know, throw it all on them. I'm just saying that like, you know, the one guy who kind of looks like he's almost maybe black,
the piano player,
teacher, but he's not. I looked him up. The actor's not black. Mm-hmm. He looks, I mean, he's very, you know, got a dark colored skin and it's in black and white. So he kind of reads as black, but there's no reason why he couldn't have been black. Like it's, you know, I don't know. It's San Francisco in the 50s. Like it could have been a black guy. I don't know.
Totally. Just
my thought on that. Anyway, should we rate it? Anybody else got any thoughts on it? I've got a bunch more notes. I mean, we didn't touch on the uncertainty principle, which is like a whole nother part of this movie. Right. But, you know, we're going to go too long if we probably...
I will say, like, this movie to me is like a much, like... I don't want to... Like a better version of Serious Man. I'm not really a Serious Man fan. Maybe I'll try to... I'm going to go in with an open mind like, on my re-watch. But, but, like, this movie brings up a lot of the same kind of stuff. Like, in a more entertaining way to me. I love the pacing of this movie. I love the world of this movie. I love how rich it is. It feels very like literary, just like all these like I said, like, oh yeah, you could cut the Italian wedding, but like scenes like that give it such like depth.
Oh yeah.
And like I wouldn't change anything about this movie. It doesn't exist at the very like, I don't rate it as high as I would something like Fargo, but like at the same time, I think it's a really cool movie, and it is such like a great expression of so much of what the Coen Brothers do really well, and at the same time a really unique movie in their catalog. So yeah, I love it.
I mean, Roger Ebert's review, it was, you know, positive, and his thing with it was that like basically taking down any of the negative, like his whole review is taking down like what all of the naysayers about this movie say, which was basically to say that like, yeah, it feels a little like self-righteous, and it feels a little bit like, you know, just the fact that they're like, it's long, and a lot of critics were like, this is too long, it's too, you know, confusing, that kind of thing. And he's just like, but in the bottom line, like, if you're gonna have any filmmaker where you get to just live in their world for 2 hours, like let it be the Coen Brothers. They craft this world, and like it's so fun to live there. Even if, you know, we read a lot into this movie, even if we didn't, even if it was just like, let's witness this Barber. I mean, there's like every internet site will tell you that this movie was based on like a poster that they saw from a barber shop, and they were just like, what if we made a movie based on that poster? Like, and it's like, even if we just read it as that, you know, as like, oh, it's their Barber movie, like it would still be a beautiful, incredible movie because it's so like amazing to look at, you know? I don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of my favorite visual films of theirs so far. I really enjoy the appeal. One of my favorite shots is toward the end when he it's kind of a shot looking down on him, and he opens the door to the prison, and it's just this light flooding out while he's standing there silhouetted by the light behind him, and it's just this really beautiful shot. We've seen a lot of shots like that. I think there's one like in Godfather and a couple other things like that, but just images like that really stay with me, and that's kind of what keeps this movie towards the top of my list. It's just the feel I get. Like I said, it's a kind of a soothing movie despite all the like mayhem and some of the stuff that actually goes down in it. So thumbs up. Should we rank these movies now, guys? What do you think?
Oh my god, I'm not ready. Let me go last.
All right.
I've got mine.
Okay, go ahead.
Number 1, Fargo. Number 2, Big Lebowski. Number 3, The Man Who Wasn't There. Number 4, Blood Simple. Number 5, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Number 6, Raising Arizona. Number 7, Barton Fink. Number 8, Miller's Crossing. And number 9, Hudsucker Proxy. How far you've fallen, Hudsucker Proxy.
Oh, that's sad.
I know. It's when I think less and less and less about it now as time goes on. And
I will say, Jennifer
that.
Jason Leigh has an uncredited cameo in this movie. She's one of the voices in the prison.
Yep.
And
who does? I'm sorry.
Jennifer Jason Leigh.
Oh, cool.
And when I was reading that and like the trivia section of IMDb or wherever I was looking at that, I just remembered how great she was in Hudsucker Proxy, and like it gave me a weird little fondness for that movie that I didn't have when we watched it, and that I lost since even more. But like I do. She is a standout in that movie, and I miss her. Like I think that she's so great. I mean, she's still acting.
You should watch Possessor. She's in David Cronenberg's Boys' most recent movie. She's still doing work. She's still doing good stuff. She's actually pretty solid.
Still great. I mean, she was the best part of that
Hateful
last.
Hateful Eight. Right, exactly. Right. Good call.
All right, I'm gonna rank mine. So, number 1 with a bullet, Fargo. Big Lebowski's number 2. I might have to make a game time decision right now because I'm looking at my list, and I'm gonna put Raising Arizona back at number 3, then Miller's Crossing, then Blood Simple, then Man Who Wasn't There, then Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, Barton Fink, Hudsucker Proxy.
Fair enough.
Okay. Do you think anybody cares about this part of the
I do.
I feel like if anything, this is like the most for us thing. And mine, and I just feel like I have nothing to contribute because my favorites are always the same, and they're always like, okay, Raising Arizona, Fargo, The Big Lebowski, but really especially those top two are they're basically they're both amazing. They're both perfect. They both bring me a lot of joy. And then number 4, and I agree, it's kind of like a step down from the others. The Man Who Wasn't There. 5, Blood Simple. Then a tie, Hudsucker Proxy, Barton Fink, and Miller's Crossing. Again, they're good movies, but I don't love any of them, and they just kind of exist on their own tier. And then the only movie that I relegate to the bad section of the list is Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Not a good movie.
Wrong.
Spicy.
Not funny. Not a funny movie.
I wish that anybody who's listening to this, we need to publish our 8-hour text thread after we recorded an episode, just continuing to argue about how good that movie was or how bad that movie was.
Just give me one funny line from that movie. Tell me what's funny about that movie. We're in a tight spot. It's literally it's unfunny.
All right, guys.
All right, good talk.
Another
next
great
week. We have a bad movie.
Oh no, is it?
I haven't seen this one yet. It's one of the few I haven't seen.
Killers. It's Intolerable Cruelty.
Oh, right.
We're
coming up.
Time
to put my Clooney pants back on, I guess.
I think it's the first one that they do not have the screenwriter credit on. Is the next movie?
I think it's the only movie.
I think. Yeah, maybe it's the only one. Yeah, maybe Lady Killers too. I don't know. We'll see.
Well,
we'll
we
see
go.
when we get there. But we'll see how this one goes. I haven't seen it since the theater, so I'm curious if I have a totally different take after watching 9 other Coen Brothers movies.
I'm curious. I'm excited for something different. I'm excited.
Yeah,
totally.
I'm sure you'll be a huge George Clooney stan after this next movie.
Can't wait.
All
right, guys. Till the next time. See ya.
I'll be to Shane.
Thank you for listening to Auteur Detour. We'll see you again next week.